Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fantasy Fiends podcast. I'm Stevie Collier, and I'm here with my co-host, Andy Peliquin, and today we are speaking with the awesome guest author, CJ Perry, author of The Dark Communion. Today we have an awesome show for you guys. We're going to be talking about something we have never talked about before, and that is, why is Andy so damn tall and handsome?
I was certain our topic of discussion was, why is Stevie doing a deeper voice than normal?
Or why is he doing that douchebag haircut?
I wasn't going to mention that on air, but you know.
It's all right. You know, I've gotten so much shit for it. It's crazy. Like, people say, oh, you're trying to go for the man bun. You think you're better than me?
For those of you who are listening to the podcast and not on video, Stevie is wearing 2 pigtails and a braid down the back.
Andy's the one that fixed them up for me. Oh, wow. I put that on myself.
Off to a roaring start. Sorry, CJ, that you have to join in on this madness.
It's good to see what you guys are all about.
Oh, yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about the Dark Communion and your fantasy vibe in general?
You know, if you take a look at the reviews on Amazon, everybody's got a slightly different take on it. But generally speaking, it's almost too dark for most people. The story is basically humankind is enslaved by minotaurs, and they require human women to sire progeny. So It gets dark real fast.
Yeah, that's just like a kick in the nuts right from the page 1.
Yeah, like just read his blurb, and you're just like, whoa.
Read it to us, Steve.
I've been using the tagline, Ayla survives chapter 1, will you? And it seems to be working because it's a little bit of a challenge and lets people know that things get better after chapter 1 because it opens really, really dark.
Hey, I think both Andy and I can respect that.
Yeah.
His blurb is, a cursed line of minotaurs has kept Ayla's people enslaved for 200 years, with nothing left to live for, and a death sentence in her womb. Ayla, is that it, Ayla?
Yeah.
Ayla trades her soul to a dark goddess for a chance to break the curse which keeps her people in chains. Armed with only her faith, Ayla leads a revolution against an army of half-beasts led by the immortal son of the goddess herself. Jeez.
Nice.
That's great.
Yeah.
So do we have like some really like some pregnancy scenes or something that just like make you just cringe?
The opening scene it makes people cringe. The book opens right after a rape, basically. It's an aftermath of a rape scene. Yeah.
That's tough.
So I've had a top Amazon reviewer, top 50 reviewer, give it 1 star and say that he got 2 pages into it. Give this one a pass.
What? A top?
Yeah.
What?
He sure did.
He's a top 50
funny part
reviewer?
Is people who have a problem with it are always men. Girls never seem to have a problem with it. I've never had. I mean, they've said it's dark, it's a bit gruesome, but really put off and immediately kind of standoffish about it and accusatory about it, seemingly in women's defense, but I don't think they need their help. But you know.
Wow. So I forgot what I was going to say. Andy, take over.
I talk too much.
That's all right. That's sort of why we have you here, because Stevie and I sometimes we run out of things to say. Isn't that right, Stevie?
Yeah, we've discussed everything, including pregnancy and rape.
Stevie, I don't think I've ever heard you run out of anything to say. You can always just like.
Well, the subject matter right here is so intense. I mean, not only are we talking about horrible things like that, but also a top 50 reviewer giving you a 1. Oh, that hurts. Like.
Yeah.
1 star.
1 star. See, that's nightmarish stuff. But it seems like you're doing. After that, though, it seems like everything was much better. 1 stars are harsh, though, and I feel like he didn't give it much of a chance.
He's a top reviewer on Amazon, and far be it from me to argue with him or anything like that. But he says that it's great, but it doesn't deliver on the promise. Well, if you've only read 3 pages, I don't know how you can make that determination. if you're offended by it, I completely understand that. You know, I definitely give it a pass. But if you're going to review it after 2 pages, I think, you know, that's a little unfair.
Yeah, I got you.
The capricious whims of the reviewers.
Andy, what is your worst review?
I got a bad review on Blade of the Destroyer, where someone had a hard time buying the fact that the hunter, my half-demon assassin, was susceptible to iron, like that iron was his weakness. Everything else, they didn't have a problem with the fact that it was half-demon or that he was an assassin or any sort of magic, that he had a soul-stealing dagger. It was just that he was susceptible to iron. Like that was the hill they chose to die on. So
that's interesting because iron and demons, that's been a part of the mythos forever.
Absolutely. And iron is actually, I don't remember if it's pagan or druidic, but it is a metal of purity. Like that is, and that's the reason that I chose iron, is because it's the metal of purity. And so it's always been something used against demons, sort of like silver and vampires. Silver and vampires and
werewolves.
And vampires. Thank you. And I got that wrong.
What is wrong with you?
Silver and werewolves.
But silver and vampires too. I mean, it's everywhere. Silver is again one of those pretty metals that you can kill bad things. That's all.
Yeah.
All I know is vampire sparkle. So.
Oh God! Don't get me started, man.
You know where I got the silver and vampires thing from? It's from the Supernatural, because the brothers, they coat their blades with silver and kill the vampires. That's where I got it from.
And it's everywhere. There's so much paranormal fantasy out there right now that you can say anything, right?
Yeah, I feel like I've seen it elsewhere too. You know what I would like to see, and I think Chris Fox is going to be doing something about this in the future. He wants to do like a Creature of the Black Lagoon. He wants to bring that back, you know, and do his own take on it. And I'm actually excited to see that, because I don't feel like people, Dracula, Frankenstein, werewolves, they're all over the place, vampires. But Creature of the Black Lagoon is also a classic creature, and I don't know. I'd like to see something about it.
I think that'd be a really interesting thing to do.
Yeah.
I know in horror circles they have a lot of creatures like that.
They do?
Yeah, they always have that sort of monster. You know, whether it's it's based in the Florida Everglades or the swamps of Louisiana. Like there's always some that same vibe.
So what makes that thing so scary? He just grabs you in the lake and pulls you down? Well, I guess that's pretty scary, but
the whole fear of that's based off of fear of the unknown. You know, that's why there's the fear of the dark, is because you're afraid of what could be lurking in the dark. Not the fact that it's dark, is that you can't see the threats around you. And that's why people are afraid of deep waters, is because they can't see what's around them. It's one of these primal fears.
Yeah. I like that. Primal fear. Yeah. It's a good fear to have.
Yeah.
I mean, think about a swamp. What are the snakes, bugs? It's a horrible place.
Yeah.
Man, we are getting on some really good topics today. Vampires, rape, pregnancy by Minotaur.
You know, when I read that, the death sentence in her womb, I just had this image of the head of the alien creature from the movie Alien popping out. Like that's what, obviously it's a Minotaur growing inside of her, but I just had the little alien head popping out of, instead of the chest from the womb.
Yeah. See, mercifully, the entire book takes place in the span of about a month and a half, from conception to just a month and a half, 2 months pregnant. So you don't get to see any of that. It's just the knowledge, just her knowing it. And I tried to stay away from the evil progeny thing as much as possible. It was more geared towards trying to have Ayla rely more on faith, because she knows she's on a clock more than anything else, because once the Minotaur is full grown and she's ready to give birth, there's no way to give birth to that. All women die giving birth to Minotaurs.
Okay.
Right.
So she knows she's on a clock, and she's willing to give her life to a goddess, because 7 months or 8 months with meaning is better than, dying without it, and dying without any meaning.
Andy, I like how you're agreeing with the whole women can't give birth to Minotaurs. How do you know? How do you know?
Dude, it's just basic biology. If a half man, half cow size thing gets a woman pregnant, it's gonna be a lot bigger than the average baby, and so it's
gross.
just like biology 101, Stevie.
The way you agreed to it, though, was like, yes, we've all read the biology books.
We've all been there, yeah.
We've all been.
Well, it's like a giant, you know.
Yeah.
The like Hagrid. Hagrid's mother was a giant. You do not have Hagrid's father being the giant because that would have changed
Right,
the story.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's a very different story for Hagrid at that point.
Well, now the story is how did that dude get with that female giant? You know.
That's really not such a difficult story.
And was she
to
happy
out.
at the end? But you know what I mean? Did he actually get the job done? Is a great question. You know,
there you go.
Apparently he did. Hagrid was born, but you know what I'm saying.
Now we're getting into some really, really weird themes.
Yeah,
I bet you we've just spooked all of our female audience.
Yeah,
So,
I'm worried about that. I'm always nervous about talking about the pregnancy in there, and because I've handled it so very, very carefully. The reason why I open at the end of a rape scene with Ayla is not because I wanted anything sensational or horrible. It's just that the mythical pregnancy trope always either denigrates women, ignores the fact that they don't call it what it is. I mean, if you've seen episodes of Angel or Star Trek or whatever, where the girls are mystically pregnant, but nothing bad happens to them. They're just pregnant. Like, it's rape. And every one of those stories ignores calling it what it really is and ignores the aftermath. Like Counselor Troy in Star Trek, she gets mystically pregnant, has a child, and then has to give him up. You never hear about it again after that episode. There is no psychological trauma attached to it that lasts past that one episode. It's a plot device to create a false sense of drama and then forgotten about. That's abusive. You're attacking women on a biological level at that point. It goes beyond misogyny at that point. So I'm always careful about when I talk about it, and I really don't want to step on anybody, so say the wrong thing, because I'm a guy and I don't understand anything. You know, so
yeah,
I'm always careful.
It's definitely a dangerous subject to talk about. So I think just for the sake of keeping it from going somewhere dangerous, we should move on to the word of the day, Stevie.
Yes, and Andy actually texted me a couple days in advance with this, and I was super excited about it. We've never had anything featured on the Fantasy Fiends podcast like this, and the word is urinate. Yes. Andy. Yes.
Where did this happen?
That is 100% not the word of the day. Let me make that very clear. The word is ululate or ululate. And it is like a wolf howls. It's that sound. But it's also the sound that the I don't want to get this wrong. I believe it's the Bedouin Arabs, sort of that ululating cry that they make, that chant that's very unique to them. And so I used that word when I had sort of a Arabian-esque setting, and my antagonists were sort of desert raiders in that ululating cry. But then also, you know, werewolves do it, demons can do it. You know, it's just this very piercing, very howling cry. Great word.
Yeah, can you type it in the chat so I don't get that wrong again? I still don't see the difference between
Urinate.
Yeah, that and urinate. They both seem like the same functions. Ululate. Ululate.
Ululate.
Ululate. Okay, it's like ukulele. Ululate. Ululate. See, if I was reading that, you know, in a book, I'd be like, "Ooh, he ululated." He ululated.
Did it make a mess?
You better clean that up.
Right.
Hey, I really do like that word, though, ululate. I didn't even know there was a different word for a howl, you know? But I definitely wouldn't use it casually, like, oh, my dog's just over there ululating. In Texas, it doesn't work.
Yeah, you wouldn't say it to Texas.
Oh, God.
I just Googled it, and it says a howl or wail as an expression of strong emotion, typically grief. It's the mourners in Africa and the Bedouins, they have that specific cry that they do when they're mourning. And
well, in Jesus' times, too, they had the mourners, right, that would follow the ceremony, and they would wail like that.
Yes, I'm not sure what type of whale the Israelites did, but it could be very similar.
Yeah. Also, I wanted to go back to what something CJ said, and that was it wasn't about the rough stuff that we're discussing, but it was more. I've read a lot of books where there have been deaths and serious situations, like very serious situations, and it's just like the next chapter, these characters are over it. They don't discuss it anymore. They don't talk about it. It's not that big of a deal. And there was a book out there that has an award, and I was arguing with my 5th grade teacher, like, this character dies and nobody gives a shit about it. And it's one of my huge pet peeves with novels. I really feel that if something serious happens, that it should take a toll on the novel, unless there's a serious time gap in between.
Right.
And I've read, and I don't have any. I feel like most novels I read don't give serious situations enough time, but it is a novel, so maybe you just can't put too much time into it. What do you think, Andy?
I'm probably a little guilty of that myself in Dark Communion, to be honest.
You seemed like you had like the whole book is based on it.
Yeah, but there's one character who dies at one point in the book, and yes, I do make sure that my other characters reflect. But one of the complaints about Dark Communion, and I'm coming out with an unabridged version because I cut about 20,000 words out of the book. I got a little overzealous with cutting. Yeah, I was told take every unnecessary word out of your book, so I did, and it may have hurt it a little bit. People still seem to like it. Yeah, it went from 85,000 words to 65, and so. One of the complaints about Dark Communion is you never get to recover before the next hit hits you. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
So you're constantly falling down, but never getting to rise back up before you fall again.
Would that constitute like page-turning effect, or is it just too much stimulus?
It does get to be too much. If it's like it has to be those highs and lows. You can definitely hit the lows harder, but there have to be some highs, or else people will just feel like they're being beaten over and over.
Some people love it. Some people have said it is a page turner. You can't put it down. It's just action packed, start to finish, and they absolutely love it. And some people say, can you please give me a moment to breathe? And so I am going to make a special edition just for those people who need a moment to breathe. So, and put those 20,000 words to some degree back in.
You see, I do the exact opposite. Well, depending on the series, like the Queen of Thieves series is the one that I'm working on now, and there have been deaths, there have been traumas, there have been all sorts of horrible things, and I make sure to research each of the sort of the psychological effects of each of these things. Maybe not dwell on it for chapters and chapters, but it's in there so that it shows the humanity of the character, because no one walks away from that sort of gut punch unscathed. Like you say, maybe it could be one small thing. It could be a big thing, like depending on how much it affects your character, who dies, who gets hurt, what the severity of the loss or the trauma is. That's how much they're affected. As an example, this story that I just finished writing is a short story, and there's a kid who gets his hand cut off in an accident, his right hand, and he develops magical powers. He has a fire hand, and so there's a certain it makes up for it in a way, but then at the same time, he's still frustrated by this loss. And it's not the same degree as, say, an adult, say a Marine who loses his right hand, his shooting hand. It's a totally different sort of loss for a child who's 11 years old.
Right.
But there has to be something in there. There's got to be some focus on this trauma in order to make the story realistic. And there's actually only a few lines or a few paragraphs in the entire story that even looks at how he feels about the fact that he lost a hand. And because he's 11, he can recover from it more quickly than a full-grown person. But there does have to be some sort of reflection on it, like Steve.
Oh, agreed. And the tragedy from I've always been told, and Tolstoy in War and Peace, to bring up the most heavy-handed reference ever, when he's surveying the battlefield, one of the characters surveying the battlefield, all the dead bodies and the horrible carnage, he notes a beautiful white butterfly that flies by. And that highlight of the beauty or whatever is contrasts that horrible darkness and makes the darkness that much worse by comparison. So when I have somebody lose somebody in the book, I always make them think of the little positive detail, not always just a flashback of them dying again or anything like that, but the little detail about something that they liked about them.
Yeah, yeah, and I will say that that's one thing that will make readers get angry about even themes like rape or abuse. If you treat it with respect, like you say you did, they'll appreciate that. But then you have to give it enough focus where people can say, okay, we've opened this wound. Now let's see some small amount of healing, because that's, in a way, that's the circle people want closed. They're okay with you opening all sorts of horrible wounds, provided it's right for the story, as long as you do bring some sort of closure, something to say, okay, life is not so bad as it seems at the beginning. It does get better in a way, even if it's just some small thing. That's what matters.
No, I agree. There is time, towards the middle of the book where the characters have time to recover and talk and think. And as a matter of fact, two of the characters get married, and there's a small little thing about that. And so there is a moment to recover or whatever before the last big fall again. But I just think that I need to put a little more breathing room in there for some people. And like I said, most people really enjoy it, but some people that move so fast that they that they just, oh my God, please give me a moment to breathe. One tragedy: starving people, children dying in war, forced pregnancy, rape, murder. Oh God, it gets pretty dark. Yeah, but it's the birth of my series villain. So this series of 3 books is doing nothing but setting up the next 3 books, because this 3 is this dark fantasy and the next one is high fantasy. And for the high fantasy novels, dark fantasy is going to feed you the villain.
Very
basically.
Cool.
I just hate the idea of the nameless bad, the bad for no reason, just evil for evil's sake. I hate that.
Agreed.
So should we get on with this week's topic?
Yeah, absolutely. It was such an interesting thing when you suggested it, because the people are enslaved, and slavery is one of the most common practices throughout history. I mean, look, go back as far as ancient Egypt and the enslaved Egyptians, or you've got Rome and all of the different types of people. The people that they subjugated and enslaved. Slavery has been around for so long.
Anything good on?
Damn Jack in the Box guy. God dang it. I'm trying to...
I hate those commercials. Anyway.
Yeah. But then going back to the topic of freedom, just like slavery has existed since... They're still doing it, Stevie.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We're good.
Okay.
I got us on Twitch. That's why.
Oh, okay. That's fine. We'll pretend that that's okay. So now I've lost my train of thought 3 times. Let's see if I can get this back.
Because of Jack in the Box. Slavery and Jack in the Box.
Not quite the same. But yeah, like the freedom is an instinctive need, something that every human has. And it's interesting in that it's not so much about, the ability to make choices. Obviously, that's what it feels like, but it comes down to a sense of self-worth. I did a little bit of research on this sort of the human driving force behind this concept of being free, is that slaves have no control over their lives. And for humans, control is everything. That's why control issues exist in the first place, because they have these traumas in their lives that totally steal their control. So they feel like, well, I can't control this bad thing that happened to me, so I'm going to do everything I can to take back the rest of my life. And so you get these people with control issues like OCD or things like that. But it really
eating
comes
disorders.
Yeah, exactly. But it comes down to a sense of self-worth. When you have the ability to make your own choices, it makes you feel like you have value, because you can say, I want to do this, and you do it. And you see the good, the bad, the ugly that comes with that decision. But the freedom of choice is it feeds into that sense of self-worth. And it's a really interesting thing that it
Agency.
really does come back down to that.
It's about agency, about having control over your own life. Yeah, it's making choices. I mean, John Locke said that there's two different kinds of freedom. There's weak freedom and strong freedom. Weak freedom is the ability to do what you want. Strong freedom is the ability to make choices. Now, it sounds like the same thing until you consider that somebody in jail does not have the ability to make choices. What they do have the ability to do is do what they want to some degree. They don't get to choose where they go or what they eat or who's around them, but they can do what they want for the most part. So they have weak freedom. And people like us who make our own choices every single day and nobody tells us no, for the most part, we have strong freedom, according to John Locke.
Very, very profound, very well said.
I took a lot of psychology courses. I was supposed to be studying English, but I didn't like it.
So you got your degree in psychology?
I never finished any degree. I was a traveler of courses and a dropper-outer of college. It was, I didn't go to college for a degree. I went to college to learn. A lot of people say that and they go in to get their degree, but it's actually true. I had a 50% withdrawal rate from college.
Whoa.
If I didn't like the class halfway through, I left. I didn't care and went inside to pick something else.
I think a lot of people could learn from you because they go and they just want to get their degree, so they never really learn anything. And so let's say they do learn something, well, they don't actually know how to do action. They don't know how to put action behind that knowledge that they learned. And I learned this about halfway through my college career. And so I started taking classes I wanted to learn and what I thought would be most beneficial whenever I did become, an entrepreneur when I got out. And that's what I did. So I totally agree with you. You should go to college because you want to learn. And plus it just motivates you to make better grades because you're taking in the lessons in so much better. At least that was my take. So I totally feel for you on that. Definitely go with that. What's up?
Once I got what I thought I was going to get out of college, I decided I wanted to be a writer. And the psychology courses really, I think, helped more than the writing courses did. I mean, I learned more about writing by reading things by Stephen King and Dwight Swain about, the art of writing. Psychology is what taught me how to make characters. Psychology is what taught me what's the motivating forces behind people, what's the motivating forces behind the world. And then history too. History taught me what, how worlds are created, how they're shaped, what drives them. I mean, realistically, there's only 5 things that drove our world anywhere. And,
Minotaurs. The answer to all those questions is Minotaurs. So we see that now in your writing.
That was my answer, yeah.
Here's something from Ayn Rand, which everyone knows. It's, since knowledge, thinking, and rational actions are properties of the individual, since the choice to exercise his rational faculty or not depends on the individual, man's survival requires that those who think be free of the interference of those who don't. Since men are neither omniscient nor infallible, they must be free to agree or disagree, to cooperate or to pursue their own independent course, each according to his own rational judgment. Freedom is the fundamental requirement of man's mind. Basically, society only exists when people are able to agree or disagree, as we're seeing so common with everything that's been happening in the last few months. Everybody has a side. Everything is so polarizing. But that's what makes us a free society.
And every advancement in the history of the world comes from freedom. It's the ability to override instinct, to say, I'm going to skip this meal to work on this thing that I'm working on. I mean, otherwise you would never have gotten farming. You would never have gotten communities. You would never have gotten anything other than hunt, eat, kill, sleep. That's it. I think it was B.F. Skinner who said that there's 4 different ways to influence people's behavior. It's reward, restraint, punishment, and compulsion. Compulsion is like you don't want to go on the plane, but somebody drags you on there anyway. Punishment, obvious. Restraint, obvious. But reward is the only one that encourages freedom. I give you $1,000 and you're homeless. It gives you more freedom than you had before. Any one of those other choices restricts freedom. Again, you started quoting, something beautiful, and I broke it down to something horrible and mechanical by B.F. Skinner. But
Yeah, no, it's two sides of the same coin.
So, with your book, why are we discussing freedom? Is it a pretty important theme in your book?
It is the only motivating factor really for the main character. It's the only one she needs. I mean, there's slavery, and then there's slavery to the point where you don't even own your own body anymore.
Yeah. Well, does she care? Okay, I don't know if this will give away your book, so don't answer it if it does, no problem. But does she care about the baby inside of her?
She's terrified of it more than anything else,
Okay.
and tries not to think about it more than anything else. But yeah, no, that's as far as I can go.
Andy, your face says it all.
No, it's excellent. I'm looking forward to cracking this book. We'll see whose stories go darker.
Oh, wow.
If yours is darker than mine, I hats off to you. I wasn't trying to get so dark about it, but my first thought was, I want to have humans enslaved by minotaurs. Well, there's no such thing as a girl minotaur. I mean, what would they have, an udder? I don't know how that works. So how is there an entire race of them? And I was like, well, I guess they would need human women. I was like, oh man, do I really want to do this?
You know what? It reminds me of an episode of Rick and Morty. Do you guys watch Rick and Morty?
Which episode?
It's
of course.
Andy, are you serious? You actually watch it?
No. Wubba lubba dub dub, man.
Wubba lubba dub dub. Yay! All right. AIDS.
Oh God.
That's my favorite one. And I apparently my girlfriend doesn't like it when I say it in the superstore, like the supermarket. So, and nobody ever gets the reference, so it's just me looking like a dumbass.
Just yelling AIDS for no reason.
Okay. Oh, all right. Wow. Okay. It's the episode where it's a male, all these males with the arms on their heads,
Yes.
And they have those female robots come down and impregnate them, and then they take them up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what your book reminds me of a little bit. Not saying it's a bad thing. It was a very interesting concept, but I understand it's a little bit more different. Yours is way darker and horrible.
I don't know. They're both pretty. Every episode of Rick and Morty is dark as hell, man. I mean,
it is.
You realize when I came back out of that mini-verse that one of two things was going to happen. My car was going to start, or I was going to have to ditch a dead battery. That was the darkest thing I have ever seen, man.
It's depressing. It was a depressing episode. Like life is meaningless, because their life's meaning was to power a battery. And I don't allow myself.
That's great from someone who powers my brake lights.
Yeah. You're a true fan.
Oh man, I just binge watched both seasons again about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, so. Yeah. I just watched the Pickle Rick episode. So, so should we go ahead with the reading?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. I noticed we got 2 documents. So,
let's do the one with the 2 characters. It's the first one of the 2.
Okay.
Now, CJ, would you rather be the narrator or would you rather do one of the voices of the characters? Take your pick.
I'd rather be the narrator, and I have to open the file I sent you.
All right. Stevie, I think we've got Isla and Dylan. So do you want to be the male or the female character?
I'll do the female.
All right.
Right.
And Isla's the pregnant one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, CJ, are there any accents? Do these characters have accents? Are they American? Are they British? What do they sound like in your head?
I don't expect anybody to do accents because there's a slight touch. I would always thought of ALS having a slight touch like Creole, but
I don't know
exactly.
Creole probably not appropriate.
It sounds Greek. Is that Greek?
No, it's think Louisiana 1850.
Creole?
Yeah.
Creole. I've never heard of it.
It is a really difficult accent. It's not the same as Cajun, which is another
That's
one.
What I'm thinking. Cajun.
Creole, I believe, is is more African and Cajun is more French. I could be
Yeah,
totally wrong.
I know Cajun is more French. Say,
Yes.
I had to learn that stuff, but okay. Well, I'm not going to do that. So,
Right, exactly.
Probably for the best.
yeah. Okay, well, I'm good to go. And y'all.
Now, what about Dylan? Does he have an accent?
British, I would think, is they're from the South. They're a little highfalutin, so I always imagine him with a British accent.
So he's a little posh.
Yeah, a little bit.
He's
a paladin, technically, or fallen paladin.
Ah, okay. So he's a little snooty. Love it. Got the accent.
The amount of times I've heard you use the word posh on this show. I love it.
It's such a
Is it
great
a lot?
word.
It is. Posh, posh. Posh, posh. Okay.
All right, CJ, hit us with it.
So should I start?
Yes,
Should I
you're the
start?
narrator. Yes.
All right. They reached the front entrance of the arena and the mainstay of the human defenses. The wind tossed Ayla's hair under the cloudy night sky. Every head bowed as she passed through the blockade of stones, weapon racks, and pikes. The only sound came from the roaring braziers side of the high arched arena entry. A horse-drawn wagon with wood slat walls and roof stood ready to receive her. Dylan drew his long sword from the scabbard at his hip. His steel breastplate and gray hair shone orange in the light. He directed her to the open door of the wagon with the tip of his sword.
Your chariot awaits.
He sneered. Ayla propped her shackled wrists on the floor of the wagon and climbed up. Dylan followed her in. She sat with her back against the wall, and he sat opposite her, sword still drawn. He laid the weapon across his lap. The door closed, leaving only the shafts of light between the boards. One lay over Dylan's right eye and the corner of his mouth. He pulled a medallion out of his breastplate and laid it over the steel. It bore the image of the sun. His lips curled into a sardonic smile. Other than curiosity at where he found the trinket, Ayla couldn't care less. She had chosen surrender. Let him think he had found protection from the goddess. It could only help Dieter and Butch in the end. The medallion served as a symbol, not a shield. A god's power didn't flow from a disc at the end of a chain. He lifted it into the bar of light shining through the wall and reflected the light in Ayla's face. She reclined her head against the slats and closed her eyes. Dylan scoffed.
You didn't even know what I was, did you?
Ayla didn't look at him as she answered, trying her best to sound bored.
I knew you were a coward and a traitor. What else is there?
I am a guardian of the light.
Ayla's dream crept up from the recesses of her memory. The light has many guardians and seeks to burn away the darkness forever. When the Freeman's lair was discovered, Ayla had assumed that the Minotaur's presence in the temple had angered the goddess. She'd been wrong. It was him, a guardian of the light. The wagon driver cracked his whip, and Ayla flinched involuntarily. Dylan gave her a satisfied sneer.
Don't like the whip, slave?
Thought made Ayla, the skin on Ayla's back crawl. Ayla looked away from him, pushing away the memory of Goreskin's whip the morning of her dream. Instead, she focused on the sound of his guts hitting the floor like wet rags. A satisfied smile tugged at the corners of her mouth at the thought. The wagon lurched forward into a turn, making them both lean. The lights of the arena passed between the cracks, throwing bars of light as they circled the monument to Tor in the center of the courtyard. Dylan rested his elbows on his knees and held his sword, pommel in one hand, the blade resting on the other. He looked at it as if he'd never seen it before.
My great-great-uncle slayed the last harbinger of the Dark Queen with this sword. After living in this hellhole for 30 years, I did not believe there would be another evil harbinger. At least, not in my lifetime. When the sword fell from my hand in that place, that's when I realized the truth. But it was too late.
Shafts of light moved along the sword as the street lamp passed outside.
You served Tor for 30 years and still have the gall to call me evil?
I do not serve Tor.
Ayla pointed at his breastplate.
That mark on your chest says otherwise.
That is a pass from Tor to walk among the half-beasts, and allows me to guard Hornstall from the return of the Dark Queen. A guardian of the light serves only his god.
You served mine in the crypt. Begged her for mercy on your knees.
Dylan gritted his teeth and gripped the blade of the sword until his fingers dripped blood.
No. I called upon my god, but his light could not reach me in that evil place.
Don't blame your god for your own lack of faith.
Dylan's eyes narrowed and his voice raised with each word until he screamed at her.
I have drunk his immortal blood from the chalice of the kings. I have slain the unrighteous with but the word of his name. My faith would never have faltered if it were not for that place.
The wagon slowed down. Hooves walked around the wagon, a torch shining through the slats. A Minotaur voice at the back of the wagon called to Dylan. Prisoner secure? Dylan cleared his throat and sat up straight.
All's well.
Cracked again. Ayla jumped. The horses resumed their normal pace. Ayla smiled at him.
You said it yourself. You did not believe another harbinger would come. Your faith faltered long before you stumbled into the crypt. The Guardian of Light have failed. The Guardians of Light have failed because of you.
Dylan's eyes flared. He pointed the sword at her chest. It shook with his need to kill her.
Look around you, priestess. I have not failed.
The wagon lurched over a pothole and the sword bit Ayla above her breast. The priestess recoiled from him and lifted her knees. She held them guarding her chest and leaned against the wall.
You begged on your knees out of fear. Fear of me and my goddess. That was your failure, and that is why the god of toil has turned his back on you.
Another street lamp passed outside, throwing ribs of light over Dylan's breastplate. The horse was pulling the horse pulling the wagon picked up to a trot.
He is not the god of toil.
Dylan leaned forward.
He is the god of goodness and light.
The tip of his sword angled down, pointing between her legs.
And virtue.
Protecting her chest from the sword, she'd forgotten her modesty. Ayla tucked her heels under her bottom.
It was your god's curse that stole my virtue,
she said, curling her lip in revulsion.
Hardly. Your goddess is responsible for your enslavement and was the first to breed the half-beasts.
Ayla's brow pinched.
You lie. The goddess herself told me the truth. The sun god cursed Tor, and when the curse could not be lifted, he slew her priests and put our people in chains.
Dylan scoffed.
That is a half-truth. Would you like to hear the rest, priestess? Or are you afraid to know that your goddess has lied to you?
My mother wouldn't lie to me. You can't make me doubt her.
Tor said the same thing. In time, though, he learned the truth and converted.
Tor worships the god who cursed him?
Dylan shook his head.
Not anymore. The Dark Queen came to him in his dreams, tempting him until he fled the Temple of the Sun. When he returned home, her priests sacrificed women to him until he'd sired her an army. When Tor discovered he'd been used, the goddess sent knights to slay him. Tor defeated him and led his sons against every temple in the north. But after all he'd done, he could never return to the light. So he sent a messenger to the Guardians, asking us to come and keep the Dark Queen from rising again.
Ayla believed most of the story, but her mother would never have sacrificed women to Tor. That was a lie. But Ayla had no means with which to refute him, so said nothing.
Unlike Tor,
Dylan said.
I can still atone.
He pointed the sword at her again.
Once you are dead, the god of light will forgive me for what happened in the crypt. The sun god is merciful.
You're a coward, and so is your god.
The look in Dylan's eyes screamed murder. Ayla invited it, daring him with her eyes. The back door of the wagon opened to a view of the main road, facing away from the castle. Max's face leaned in and swept his chin-length blonde hair away from his scruffy face. Ayla's jaw dropped. Her mind tried to reject the face, but it was him. And I forgot. That's a spoiler. Oh well.
It's okay for those of us who haven't yet read it. It's not a spoiler, and by the time we actually get to reading it, we won't remember that it's a spoiler.
Right.
Yeah,
there you go.
yeah. And who is Tor, by the way?
People didn't understand me anyway. I'm from New York.
Oh, what exactly is Tor? Tor? Because I think the Old Republic from Star Wars. So
Tor was actually a legendary figure from Greek mythology who could, like, I don't remember, something like he could lift 500 pounds with one finger type of thing. Like, basically, some of the stories of Hercules come from him.
Oh, okay.
That or the.
Well, also, real quick, I wanted to thank all of the viewers on YouTube right now who are watching the show. Thanks, guys, for being here with us during this episode of the Fantasy Fiends podcast. So yeah, I just wanted to do a quick shout out to those guys and say thank you for being with us. And also, CJ, that was excellently crafted. It was a very fun read. Andy, with that posh accent, I swear it's.
I love the accent.
I'm jealous.
And you make an excellent girl, by the way. No, you made a great girl.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
No, there's a way professional audiobook recorders or, the actors, if they're male, they do a really good job with that female voice, So I try to take it from there. It's just softer. It's just a little bit softer.
Yeah, you just kind of soften it a little bit.
Yeah. If you go overboard, it just takes away from the story.
Although, like for humorous characters, a little bit overboard can be really fun.
Yeah, like I think your audiobook, Andy, the whore in the very beginning, the prostitute, isn't she a little bit more high pitched in the?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So. Very nice.
I worked really closely with a voice actor on Dark Communion. Oh man, she's gonna kill me. I can't remember her name. But she told me that it's not so much changing your voice as just changing the attitude of the way you're trying to communicate. It's not changing your voice; it's changing the way you read. It's very artsy fartsy. I don't understand it personally. That's like when a dancer isn't doing when they say, "I want to see your heart." I still don't understand how that helps anybody. I don't get it.
Well, I see that. So you got a person to. How did you go about getting your audiobook actor?
ACX is the kind of like the audio talent recruitment site for Audible, and if you just go there and you post your job, and Melissa Rezian Frank, that's her name. Anyway,
very nice.
Go on there, post your job, and people will tell you how much it is per finished hour of audio. And Melissa gave me the right price for the right level of talent. She's an amazingly talented voice actor, and I pled poverty to her a whole bunch, and she took mercy on me, and it was great, man. It was a lot of fun working with it, and I think it's a necessary step in your book because if you don't hear it spoken out loud, the entire thing, you don't know what parts are really working and which parts aren't, to be honest. Until it's read out loud to you, word for word, every single step of the way, you don't really know what's working.
That's a really good tip for authors. I've actually heard that one before. It's very important to, when you're editing your book, to read it out loud as well. So
yeah, you can read it out loud to yourself, but it's still not the same thing as having somebody else read it out loud. And my voice actress made changes to my book than I think I did.
Oh, she.
Yeah, I will say a great voice actor can totally improve a book. My favorite book, The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch, I've never opened the pages once. I have listened to the audiobook like 4 times because the guy who does it is just so good. Like I won't buy the book when it comes out. I will buy the audiobook when it comes out.
Oh, that's
cool.
What
a great audiobook, Screw Tape Letters by C.S. Lewis, done by John Cleese.
So good. So good.
Amazing. Your affectionate uncle, Screw Tape. It was great, man.
John Cleese is awesome. Well, we are running out of time. So, CJ, why don't you tell our viewers where they can find you and learn more about you and stalk you and all that good stuff?
We have a blog, me and a co-author, DC Ferguson. It's artofthearcane.wordpress.com. It's a little long. I'll type it in here. And you can find me on Amazon. Do a search for CJ Perry Dark Communion. It's not too hard to find me. Not too many Dark Communions out there.
Yeah.
Like some other books, like if you name your book Anything Into the Darkness or The Darkness of, you'll be searching all day long. But Dark Communion, CJ Perry, not hard to find on Amazon. It's free. Book 2 comes out. Well, it goes up for pre-order in about 13 days. It'll be out at the end of September.
Sweet, man. I love that. It's so close. It must be really exciting.
It's, if you ever saw the the guys that do South Park talk about when the previews for South Park start airing. So yet, and no matter what they do, they can't get away from it, and it's so stressful that now you can't do it. Editing and stuff left to do in Rise of the Shadow Walker, and the more I advertise that it's coming, the more pressure I'm putting on myself, and I'm losing. I'm losing. I'm serious, man. It's coming out.
Well, after it's done, it'll come back, hopefully.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. You'll have to come on next time and show us if it's less or more.
Yes, that will be the theme of our show.
Has CJ
Carlos
come back?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, my real name is Carlos, just so you guys know. I went with CJ Perry because the first comment I ever got on my book was your English is excellent, which I'm relieved.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm relieved because I failed Spanish too twice. If my English sucks, I'm done for. So
that's funny. You got a review like that?
Yeah, I had Amazon take it down.
Oh wow. You have such good luck with reviews. When you get back, I want to hear about your hair and more of your reviews.
The 3-star one that just says okay is my favorite.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Stars, okay. I guess that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is what it is. All right, guys, that's our show for today. So make sure to go check out CJ on artofthearcane.wordpress.com. I posted the link on the YouTube page in the chat. And check him out on Amazon, Dark Communion. Tune in next week to listen to Tom Falwell. I hope I pronounced his name right. I was a guest on his podcast a few months ago. He's a great guy to talk to. We're going to have a ton of fun. I think he writes more epic fantasy. So after today's dark fantasy, we're having a little bit of a palate cleanser.
Yes. Well, I really enjoyed this episode. If you're listening, please subscribe to our show. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. That does a world of help for people who are trying to get out there on YouTube. And go ahead and like us on Facebook as well at facebook.com/thefantasyfiends. We also have a brand new t-shirt out there. You can find it on facebook.com under shop, and we have all sizes. So, and all profit goes to marketing.
Like triple X? You got my size?
Yeah, I do. Wait, I don't know if you're joking or not with that.
No, I do actually wear triple X sometimes.
Are you serious? Because of your height, right?
Yeah. Yeah, especially like if I ever shopped at Abercrombie and Fitch or American Eagle, I would have to buy triple X because their sizes run super
How tall are you?
6'6".
Oh wow. Okay, yeah, so yeah, you are tall.
See, if I was your dad, I would just be buying like a lot of potato sacks and just cutting holes in them and putting them over your head.
Ponchos and muumuus.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Well,
thank you, everyone, for listening. We want to thank CJ for being here. Really appreciate it. Tune in next week for another awesome, fantastical episode of the Fantasy Fiends podcast.
Yeah, we should start doing next week on the Fantasy Fiends.
Stevie talks about urinating.
Unfortunately.
Ovulating.
Unfortunately.
All right, we better cut this before it goes. See you guys next week.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.